Yes, we all good to go?
Yep,
Yep.
ready to go.
Sorry, I'll do that intro again now that I've unmuted everyone.
I'm going, there's no noise.
It was probably the best intro I've done all season as well, you know.
It always
Quietly.
is, Phoenix. It always is when we
Yeah, I
can't
know.
hear it.
I know.
I felt like
I
a bit,
know.
everybody's pissed off and left me.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap brought to you by the rabble that is CrowCast.
We're so professional.
God, if you knew what had been going on in my household today, you would understand what just happened. Never mind. How was our weekend, guys?
Yeah, pretty good.
Port lost. It was hilarious.
Oh,
One of the highlights of the weekend.
was that the funniest thing you've ever seen in your life? Seriously.
Oh, they're getting a Cockwobble nomination for that one.
Hilarious, just hilarious. Look, let's get into the scores without further ado, and I better just play some music. What the hell, eh? Very interesting round of footy. A couple of upsets over the weekend, and a couple of teams probably not doing their finals hopes particularly any good. But what did you guys make of it?
Well, it was a funny weekend in some ways. There were, I think, at least three teams that were down to maybe even one, if not two, only interchanges for the rest of the game pretty early, and yet they went on to win the game. So that was a bit surprising. That the rotations. You always think that you need your rotations, but like Essendon was one example of that. The Giants were another example of that, and Sydney was another example of that.
Oh, we'll get to it in when we do the wrap. But I think the Giants actually, the first player they lost actually helped them because it actually stopped them having a defensive forward, and all of a sudden they could open up the play there. I think it really showed in the Port West Coast game there. But what is so, I think, damning out of the weekend are the injuries that are happening, particularly to those teams who are, trying to get somewhere in the finals. There's some really big losses.
Just reminding people that we're also live on Facebook now, and already we have someone from the Riverland and also someone from Los Angeles, Amanda from Los Angeles, tuning in. So nice to see you, Amanda. Thanks for joining us, and proof that the CrowCast is a global phenomenon.
Yes, of course.
Anyway, look, let's get into the weekend's results. We had on Friday night, we had Essendon 18-14, 122, defeating St Kilda 11 goals, 13-79, and keeping their hopes alive for the finals.
Well, not a bad game to watch, although St Kilda really aren't a Friday night team because they're not good enough. Essendon always good to watch, I think. Brown from St Kilda, he's going to get a minimum of 3. What do you reckon, guys? 3? Well, that.
Didn't say it.
You'd think,
when
Macca, I think.
Well, apparently when it's referred to the tribunal under the gradings that he's been given, 3 is the minimum that he can get. So I'd say I reckon he'll get 3 to 4, and that was disappointing to see that particular incident because it was definitely a very, very late, front on charge. And but to his credit, I think the guy's he's planning on fronting up next week. So hopefully that is the case. But it was not a bad game to watch, but not a Friday night game in my opinion.
No, not at all. Never mind. Look, Essendon is still in the hunt, I guess. Anyone think they can sneak in?
I'd like to see them in, but I think it's probably one of the games they're going to fall down. That's right at the end. Yeah,
probably. All right. Next, we had the old rivals Hawthorn and Geelong fighting it out again. Hawthorn getting up 10 goals, 11.71 to Geelong, 8 goals, 12.60, so a margin of 11 points in the end. I thought Geelong were going to sneak it in there for a while, but Hawthorn are just coasting along nicely, and no one's really talking about them, but they're in good shape. Yeah,
that's true. I'm surprised because I didn't think their side was all that good, but it just goes to show that they're a team, and Clarkson got them playing as a team and getting the best out of them because they're getting a lot of drive out of Mitchell.
Yeah.
People think that he doesn't do much damage, but if they worked out what he actually does that result in it, it's a lot more than he's been given credit for. But they won't win a flag, but they'll definitely play finals.
Oh, I'll tell you what, though, Macca, if they happen to sneak into the grand final against Richmond, they're the sort of team. They're the sort of team. You're right, Nikki. That can get under Richmond's skin and scrap and carry on. And Clarkson's a master coach, and of course him and Dimmer have got a connection there. So I don't know. It's an interesting one.
They're the ones. I was talking with somebody a couple of weeks ago about, it's kind of like Richmond have been given that free run into the grand final, but who else is there? And my point was, I reckon Hawthorn is the real smoky. They're the ones you're going to have to watch out for.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Nikki. What else have we got here? We had Richmond, speaking of Richmond, giving the Suns a good old-fashioned hammering by 12 goals. Richmond 19 goals, 11-125 to the Suns, 7 goals, 9-51, and Jack kicking a lazy 10.
Yeah. He kicked more than, Gold Coast's total score?
Yeah, he actually beat Gold Coast by himself.
Yeah, he beat Gold Coast by himself, and the fact that Richmond kicked 19 goals and it's taken the Suns 3 weeks to kick 19 goals. Thank you, Brad Johnson on Saturday Scoreboard, but that was a very lovely little
that's a pretty good stat.
I went,
certainly never bothered to watch that one.
No, I didn't bother to watch that one too, I have to say. Better things to do.
And he got given an absolutely shocking handball so he could get his 10. But, yeah.
Let's just stop talking about Revolt now because the next game is West Coast v Port. West Coast, Port Adelaide actually leading from the first siren to the last siren and losing 9 goals, 8.62 to 9 goals, 4.58. West Coast doing it again to Port Adelaide at the Adelaide Oval, and
in the same spot.
And the only thing, it wasn't Chewy, but it was a McGovern, and those McGovern boys have ice in their veins, don't they?
Yep. And
I love Simpson's comment after the game. He was asked, was he confident? And he said, no, because you can really kick him like a sandbag sometimes. That was not a pretty kick he did.
No, but it was straight, and that's the main thing. But Port in their song they sing after the games on the rare occasions they win, they part of it is history here in the making, and my understanding is that this is history in the making in the sense that it's a team. It's the first time a team has led the whole of a game up to the final siren and lost after the final siren. That's the first time that apparently that's ever happened.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered about that, but that is an amazing stat, and hence they're actually this is what we put the Cockwomble together for. Really, was something completely stupid that also made us laugh, and Port are just no, they've won it for this week because that is hilarious. They never ever conceded from the very first, the first scoring shot. They were in front the whole way.
Well, the whole allotted time, from siren to siren, they were in front. Just lost it after the siren. It's the first time that's ever happened, and that goes along with a 119-point record loss in the grand final, and the first AFL team to lose to the Gold Coast, and the first AFL team to lose to the Giants.
Them up.
They are history in the making.
They're marvellous. They're really marvellous.
Look, all jokes aside, I mean, a couple of things that I noticed at the end there. First, they just parked the bus. I know they had injuries and all the rest of it, but they parked the bus for far too long. Robbie Gray missed those easy shots, especially the second one there. But Justin Westhoff, in that last play, again, for the second week running,
playing for the free kick,
has played for a free kick.
Yes,
and the umpires know he does it. So if you start to get that reputation with the umpires, even if something is there, because you are playing for that free kick, they're not going to give it to you. He's obviously now got a reputation with the umps. They just went, nah.
Yeah. So there's such a dour, defensive, cynical club at the moment. And I was only thinking today that Port supporters of old, like the old Port SANFL supporters, this club and this team must be unrecognisable to them because they're nothing like the Port Adelaide that I grew up with. Nothing like it.
Well, they beat their chest and say they are, but they're not.
No.
My dad was a Magpies man from birth, and I actually grew up going to every second week. I would go and watch the Magpies play. So they are and have always been a manufactured club. They've never been Port Adelaide to me, and they've also never been Port Adelaide to my dad.
Mm.
And he actually thinks this is hilarious.
Yeah, well, it is. Anyway, let's not dwell. We had Collingwood and Brisbane fighting out a reasonably entertaining game. Collingwood 14-20-104 to the Lions 11-7-73. I reckon the Lions might be just starting to run out of puff after not a bad year, really.
Definitely the best 16th team in the comp, I reckon there has been. They play pretty good footy for a team that's sitting at number 16.
Yeah, because weren't they only something like 7 points down, 4 points down at half time?
Correct.
Yeah, they're pretty close. I mean, they've got some great youngsters. They've got some good height. They've got some talent. It'll be a shame if they lose Beams next season. There's a little bit of word around about that, but I think they're in good shape. And with Fagan there and Hodge sort of in the background, there's a lot to like about Brisbane, and I think they're going to shake it up next year. I really do.
Yeah, they'll definitely rise.
Then we've got the Kangaroos just going down to the Bulldogs, and that could be costly for them and their finals hopes. The Western Bulldogs 13 goals 14.92 to the Kangaroos 12 goals 13.85. I didn't see the game myself, but how the heck did they lose to the Bulldogs?
Well, I did watch it, and it was a terrible game to watch, quite frankly, because I don't like either of these two particular teams, and I don't reckon either of these two teams play attractive footy. But they lost it basically because I thought they got outworked by the Bulldogs in the second half. As simply as that. I didn't think they worked hard enough.
Did you see it, Nick?
Nah, was at the SNFL.
Well,
but watching the scores and going, this is interesting.
Yeah, what the hell? What else we got? Another team that not doing their finals hopes any real joy. Melbourne getting done by Sydney. Sydney 13 goals 9.87 to Melbourne 10 goals 18.78. Bad kicking by Melbourne, and Sydney just hanging around. They don't really inspire any great confidence, but they're not going away.
Well, I wanted Sydney.
Heaney was epic in that last quarter, down back.
And that mark.
That was good.
Probably the mark of the year, I reckon. There's going to be many, very good good nominations for the mark of the year, but that one was a terrific, Mark. It was just him and another guy, and he's gone so high, he's gone on the guy's shoulder, then gone up again and gone over him.
Yeah, Hogan, who had a dog of a game. Why can't Hogan play like that against us?
He played a stinker, absolute stinker. But Melbourne don't have at this stage the temperament to go a long way in. Even if they do make finals, they have the ability, but they don't have the temperament, in my opinion. And I think next year they're going to be a very, very good side. But I was very pleased that Sydney won because Melbourne. I'm hoping that Melbourne don't even make finals because the lower they finish, well, the better the pick we're going to get when we get their first round pick. So I barrack against Melbourne all the time, but I have to admit they have got a lot of very good players, and I think next year they're going to be a very good team. But Sydney, they know nothing but to try, and that's what really won it. That's what really won it for them.
I think the problem with Melbourne is what we've been talking about for quite a while is they've got a lot of very good players, but they don't know how to win hard. GWS, we've finally seen that switch has finally been switched. They can start to do it. They can dig in and they do smart play when they're being challenged, etc. Melbourne still can't quite do that, I don't think.
Well, let's face it, it's their first year in contention for quite some time, and they've got some blokes in there that haven't been in contention before at all. So they'll be around the mark. They've got a good team. But it'll be interesting to see if they hang on to Hogan. Hogan's playing like a bloke who's on his way out, to be honest.
Yeah, and with the things that's like happened externally to his life, I mean, it might be one of the best things for him to actually go back home and be closer to family and friends. So we don't quite know what's going on there, but we do have to mention we absolutely feel for Johnston doing his possibly sixth knee injury, which is just shocking.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too, Nikki. That was very, very sad to see that. And I mean, this is only his second game back, and he played a very good game last week in his first game back, and you thought, well, he's finally going to get a run at it, and bango! It's his good leg that went on him.
It's surely that's got to be it.
No, he's actually has had them on both knees. I think his first one was on that leg. I think that's what he said afterwards. I've just done it like I did my first one.
Oh, okay. Because the Sydney guy talking about it said that it was on his good leg. So
well, it's probably on the one that he hasn't had a lot of trouble with of late.
Poor bugger. And just on that, Bernie Vince in the VFL, apparently he's done his ACL, and he's out of contract at the end of this year. So that might be it for Bernie too.
Well, he'll be back to selling houses full time.
Yeah, you reckon?
Well, that's what he's got in Melbourne. That's his job.
Yeah, okay. Where are we at? We're at that last game. God, Fremantle 15-11, 101 to Carlton 10 goals 12.
I came out of the SANFL game. No, I came out of the SANFL game, checked the scores, and went Carlton are in front. Like, what the hell?
Well, I'm very glad that got me a bit of money, Nikki, because I cannot believe the bookies. Because Carlton in front at half time, guy got $1.98 on Freo to win.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No, $1.98 with Carlton, $1.70 something.
Don't be silly.
I'm telling you the truth.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, got $1.98, so I just thought taking money. Silly Mrs. Mackie. She'd gone out to get tea for us, and come back, I'd paid for it.
Nicely done.
So that leaves us with an interesting ladder. Richmond away on top, West Coast away in second. Then we've got GWS in third. Hawthorn moving up to fourth on percentage. Collingwood equal on points, as well as Sydney equal on points. Melbourne and Port Adelaide hanging in there on 48 points. Geelong 44 out of the 8, with North Melbourne and Essendon probably the only 3 teams out of the 8 that can make it. And Port and Melbourne, they're in a bit of strife. I wouldn't mind betting that Geelong and Essendon sneak in there, The Crows, as we'll talk about in a moment, we're done at 40, then Freo, Bulldogs, St Kilda, Lions, Suns and Carlton. How the hell the Lions aren't above St Kilda's got me stuffed.
Well, they've just lost narrowly in a lot of games where they played very well.
Yeah,
that's very true, but my God.
Yeah, you'd say on form, even though they haven't won more games, you would say that Brisbane is the better team.
They're a team, and they're a team with a future. As Feenix said earlier, they've got a lot of good young lads there, and it was a very smart move getting Hodge there to be a general in the background and on the field with these boys, and they're getting groomed for next year, and I think they'll definitely rise up a few spots next year, and if they keep drafting as well as they have, they do have a future. Unlike the other team up there.
Yeah. All right. Well, without further ado, let's have a listen to this music again because it's appropriate again.
Get ugly. Damn, that's ugly.
What are we going to do, eh? Seriously.
We're now going to look towards 2019.
Yeah.
As Pikey said.
Let's do that. For those who've been living under a rock, it was the Giants 15 goals, 16, 106 to Adelaide 13 goals, 14, 92. A margin of, 14 points in the end?
Yeah, 14 points.
Very disappointing. Very disappointing.
Well, it's true in the sense that it's our usual third quarter efforts where we let ourselves down. As I said to you off air, Feenix, in a way I was pleased to see that we lost and put an end to all this bullshit about dreaming that we're going to make finals. At least we can stop talking about that now and prepare our team for next year. And, it wouldn't upset me if we didn't win it. Or certainly want to win the last one against Carlton, but even if we lost next week against North Melbourne, that would not bother me either, as long as we start planning for the future. And
are we going to? Do you reckon? Do you reckon we will?
Well, I bloody well hope so.
Yes, because I know who was sitting at the SANFL game today.
Who?
Okay, Nikki. What sort of thing do you think might happen then?
Well, because when you got Justin Reid actually sitting and watching an SANFL game, he often doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sitting next to Pikey and they're having quite a few little discussions. I think there were some discussions around players that are out playing in the SANFL. Very much so. I was really disappointed that Ben Davis actually got an injury today because he's one of the players I would love to see what he can do in an AFL team.
Yeah, that's disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, and he was in a moon boot for the second half.
Did I see somewhere that Fogarty played full back?
Yes, he did, and played really well.
Did he?
Oh, yeah. The Eagles have a really, I'm trying to remember the name of the bloke, but a really big, strong full back. And we didn't have any other bigger bodies. So they put Fogarty down there, which is great learning for him. We know he reads the play beautifully. He was consistently outmarking that bloke or putting the body pressure on, which they really didn't like because we know how Fog would just, run through them. They really didn't like that. But he did it brilliantly. He made them drop so many marks and things like this. He played really well.
Back to the game in question, though. To me, it revealed quite a few things, really. I just thought that Tex's game was terrible. If he does get suspended for a game or two, well, that's no sweat because on form, he doesn't even really, in my opinion, he doesn't even deserve to be in the team.
Yeah, but he doesn't deserve to lose a game for that because he let go of the player. He actually did his duty of care.
No,
he didn't have his arms pinned. He couldn't do anything because they're both turning when he tackled. And as soon as he saw he was going down, he let go of him.
I agree. I agree with that.
Actually, he did what he was supposed to do in that situation. And I have to agree with Paul Seaman. The fact that another umpire's come in and changed a ruling because a player got injured.
Yeah, one umpire
That's wrong.
had played on holding the ball.
The closest umpire played holding the ball. It was the one further away who saw he was on the ground and went, no, we've got to give a free kick to him because he's got a sore head.
I agree with all that being incorrect. The only thing the only concern I've got with the way that Tex did sling him was the fact that by the time he released his arms, there was no hope of him getting his arms out.
No, his arms were already out.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, he only had one arm to start off with, and even then, that got let go very early.
The problem with it, as I saw it, Nikki, is that there were two motions. There was a definite slinging motion.
No, there was a turn. There wasn't a sling.
Well,
what they class as a sling and what they've shown as examples, that wasn't it.
Well, if you have a look at it, Tex makes the tackle, and then he also makes an effort to throw the bloke to the ground. It's not a sling in terms of the definition in terms of the rules, but there were definitely two actions in Tex's tackle, and I think that's what's going to do him in the end.
Yeah, I think he's in trouble, and I think he will get. Well, to me, I think one would be adequate, but I think he will probably get two.
Yeah.
But anyway, it doesn't really matter because, as I said, his game was very, very poor on the weekend. 2 touches in the first half, and I think it was 4 in the second. And when you're the leader of the tribe, and that's the example you're setting, it's not a very good one.
No, have to agree, Macca. Have to agree.
I think we've, as Simon Morley said, off to surgery early pre-season. That's what he needs. We know he's not playing right.
Yep, agree.
Well, I totally agree. Yep.
Look, I think we just got outplayed when the game was there to be won. To be perfectly honest with you, I felt like when the game stepped up a gear, and typically in the third quarter, we've had trouble this season, and I think a lot of it's to do with belief. I honestly don't think that this squad actually has belief, and every time a team turns up the wick a bit against us, we go into our shell, and as we go through the stats this evening, we'll see it again. But we just didn't have any answers when GWS turned it on in that third quarter.
What do we do at half time? Have a beer and a cigarette or something? We always go in at half time, and we come out, and when there's no intensity in it, we come out and and we can be
they did restructure as well though because of how well we kind of countered and controlled that play in that second quarter. The second quarter was really good though. We've got to talk that quarter up, and of course you get that break for the opposition team to restructure, etc. But I do think it was very much that as soon as Reid went off and they stopped having such a negative, or actually two, they were having, no, it was mostly just him, a negative forward, it meant they could go back to being so much more proactive, whereas we'd turned Murphy into keeping Minder onto, I think, Whitfield. Eddie we were playing up higher, so he was actually more, his job was actually keep Shaw out of the game. So I think we kept with our defensive forwards. They just went and played to their high level of skill because they're high level draft picks, and it showed.
Just interrupting. Mrs. Mack has just handed me a note saying, pardon my language, but our fucking letterbox has been stolen. God.
Who did that?
I don't know. I mean, it's concrete into the ground.
Oh, that's funny. Did Mrs. Macca actually write that? Is that what she said?
Yeah. She just handed me a note with it, yes.
Oh, you guys make me laugh. I swear to God. Anyway, stop interrupting the bloody show, Mrs. Macca. Let's go through some head-to-head stats. Look, 346 to 340 disposals, GWS over Adelaide, so it's pretty close. Normal kick to handball ratio by us. GWS outmarked us 81-79 around the ground. Tackles, they certainly out-tackled us 82-65. Source won the hit-outs, but you wouldn't have known it, 63-44. I felt like his hit-outs were fairly ineffective for a vast majority of the game. Look, where are we? Clearances 41-39. We won those, but we had a terrible patch during the game where we just couldn't get our hands on the ball again. Inside 50s were even. Look, to be honest with you guys, there's problems to me when the game's there to be won. As I mentioned previously, I don't know whether you noticed it, Macca, but I certainly did. I noticed that when the whips are cracking, we just go missing. Yeah,
and unfortunately that's true. We're actually the converse of Sydney, I reckon. You know, when their backs to the wall, Sydney really dig in. And unfortunately, when GWS applied a greater level of pressure in the third quarter, we were missing.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. And we looked soft.
What do you think, Nick?
For me, it was that midfield, that lack of defence, because it was those players running through, and it was our midfielders just not being so accountable. And I think that's where that, what you just talked about then, Feenix, that desire, that will to get in and under and really clog it up, turn the game into a scrap so we can get it back how we want it to be. That's where we go missing. It's in that part of the ground. And yet we've got players like Sloan and Crouch. I thought Crouchy had a decent-ish game.
I didn't like his game at all, actually. I
was quite scathing against him the other week, whereas I thought he was a bit more proactive.
I didn't mind his game.
Yeah. So, I don't know. He's up and down for me. But they're the ones who should be doing that, and that's where it's falling down.
Well, yeah. I thought also that I was a little bit surprised when I looked at. I saw CEY going for the ball in the third quarter, and I did see him get the ball in the first quarter, but I'd completely forgotten about him. And I said to the missus, "Is he playing?" I thought he had a very poor game, CEY, and on top of that, I noticed he only got 61% game time, and I think that may be reflective of the way he was playing. But I also noticed Greenwood only had 60%.
Why are you going through individuals, Macca? You've been doing this show now for 2 years,
and
you know that we talk about team stats first, and then we go into individuals.
But I'm going, yeah, okay.
Just because your bloody letterbox is gone, I don't know whether...
He's confused.
I'm a little bit at 6s and 7s without the bloody letterbox, you know.
No, it's just old age, really. I don't know whether either of you have got access to our Facebook coverage at the moment, but I've just chucked a few graphs up there. The stat tracker was in fine form on Saturday night. And what it shows, once again, is our inability to get hold of the ball through at periods of the time. You can correlate the score dipping after half-time with a severe drop-off in our disposal count, both by hand and by foot. And again, our uncontested possession, it didn't go through the roof like it did the other day, but we certainly try to keep possession of the ball when we're under the pump. We don't go out on any limbs anymore, if you know what I mean. We're not aggressive with our ball movement.
Well,
yeah,
we're certainly not. But I don't know. I just thought that you're quite right. We would try to hang on rather than trying to make the play.
Yes,
and,
I think that's my point, Macca. That we definitely try to hang on. We seem to go all right when we're matching it with the opposition, but whenever the opposition turn up the heat, we don't seem to have the ability to go with them at the moment.
No, we don't, and we just keep trying to hang on. Somebody makes an error, somebody does a bad kick, and results in a goal, and then we go through the process again and again until there's a break or something like that. But good sides can actually hold it, and then turn it around, and then start pouring the heat back on them. And we're just, well, in fairness to our players, a lot of them had very interrupted seasons, and I guess that's reflected in their efforts. But the way we played this particular game, I think, was typical of our season.
Now, you guys keep talking for a minute. I've just got to step away from the mic for 2 seconds.
Oh,
All right, Nikki, what do you want to say?
for once, I'm like, I don't want to say anything. Well, can we actually talk about that second quarter? Because I really enjoyed how much we controlled that play. Our defensive setting up there was so well done. We really stopped them trying to get that outlet out. But the problem is disposal into the forward 50. I mean, Eddie did a shocking one, and that's Eddie.
Yeah. PJ Crows actually makes a very good point too. Is the fact is that when the ball hits the deck last year, we had Cameron Betts and Knight, and at times being electric off, hitting the deck and scooping up the ball. Whereas we don't have anybody that's really particularly in our forward line that can do that at the moment. And Eddie's he's well off the pace at the moment, and Lynch not a bad game for Lynch, but nothing.
Lynch started all right, but then he made some critical blunders in it when the whips were cracking.
Teams are also very mindful about keeping those players away from our forward line, though.
Yeah,
I've noticed that this year.
I want to talk about our centre clearance and our centre setup for a minute. And the reason is because there's a nice Essendon supporter that posts some midfield starting stat. It's a very unusual stat that he posts every week. Have you guys seen that?
No.
So what he does, he basically analyses who starts where at every centre bounce, right? So I'll just read you these, and I've got the clearance numbers up on, or the chart up on the stream on Facebook at the moment. But in the first half, we had Sloaney and Crouch dominating in the middle, 10 and 9 centre bounces they started at. Greenwood had started at 8, Ellis Yeoman at 7, and Douglas at 6. Gibbs at 5, and then also 3 on the wing, and we had Atkins and McKay predominantly starting off the wings and starting off the back end. In the second half, the notables were that Douglas spent a bit more time in the middle, but Greenwood only started at 3 centre bounces after half-time, and CUI only 6 after half-time. Now, if you have a look at how our centre clearances stacked up after half-time, they went through the floor after half-time, our centre clearances.
Yeah.
Yes, because we were well in front at half-time, and we were behind by the end of the game.
Yeah, so we were +6 around half-time in centre clearances, and by probably a third of the way through the last quarter, we were back to even, and we ended up 1 down. But the trend line of our centre clearances goes south, and then when you match it up with those statistics that person has posted here, it ties up quite succinctly with Ellis Yeoman and particularly Greenwood being absent from centre square setups. Now, is that by design, or is that just a result of rotations, or what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't work it out because, as I said, I picked up that CUI wasn't in the midfield, and when I looked at the stats later, that it confirmed that Greenwood wasn't in there very much either. And why that is the case, I don't really know, because at least they can crash packs and they can actually work very hard to get the ball. The one thing we really lack in that centre square is somebody with electrifying pace to break away.
And a decent ruckman.
Well, yeah, Sauce he had a lousy year, there's no doubt, by his past standards, and whether that's going to be where the best he could do these days, I don't know. whether perhaps he's been battling injury all through I know he had that back problem. Maybe he's still having it. I don't know. But if that's the best he can do, it's not good enough, because if that's what we're going to have to put up with next year, well, then we're not going to go that well, because Source might have had a lot of taps, but there weren't that many to advantage, I don't think, anyhow.
Well, I mean, it's a crazy stat, because our hitouts were plus 19 over GWS, and yet, as we've just mentioned, our centre clearances were rubbish. Our stoppage clearances weren't much better, and how Source was able to get such an advantage in terms of raw hitouts, and yet lose the ascendancy in the middle, and also just didn't even pass the eye test as far as I was concerned. He looked ineffective.
Well, I did see the stats for effective hitouts somewhere, and I think while we were plus 19 for hitouts, I think we only like plus 2 or 3 for effective hitouts.
Now, is that down to Source, or is that down to setup?
Don't know.
We're getting, often what it is though, is he's being told to tap it that close in. So he's winning it, etc. He's tapping that close in because we want to turn it into that closer kind of thing. We're not spreading well enough. Teams with those faster midfielders, they can get that quick handball out, and all of a sudden somebody sprinted it, and you've got a Crouchy trying to chase him. Yeah, he's not going to catch him.
I'm glad you used that word there, because that's one of the things I did want to raise. The ability of GWS to spread, whether that be in the centre of the ground at the hit-out, or whether it be once they're going forward into attack. That's one of the reasons why they scored easier than we did, because of the fact that when we go forward, at one stage there, I think it might have been in the third quarter, I was looking at where we were kicking the ball to. There's about like 20 players where we're kicking the ball to. Surely players can run sideways and spread out and take a player out there with them. And I don't know whether we're lazy or whether we're just stupid. We all congregate in a great big lump. Whereas when GWS went into a fairly open forward line.
Yeah, well, one thing that's noticeable defensively for us is the fact that we're playing a lot higher than we have previously, and we don't seem to be playing a quarterback, and we just keep getting done over the back. It happened against Port as well. We were getting done over the back, and it wasn't until they sort of reset and set it up a little bit deeper after half-time against Port that was avoided. But we did again, and I think we really suffered because of Talia's absence. We looked a little bit undersized there down back. But again, it's a structural thing as far as I'm concerned. I couldn't actually see why we were playing so high.
Yeah, I can't argue with you, because that is how we played against Port. And as you say, no quarterback to mop up anything that gets past there. And you pay the price for it if it does get past there. And I mean, Pikey made that comment that we are playing a high press, and it's worked pretty well. He said occasionally you'll leak a goal or two, but he says that's it's how you see it overall. And well, I think it leaked more than a goal or two.
Yeah. Look, our other stats were all right team-wise. I mean, we won the marking contest. We won contested marks. We were even on marks inside 50. Our pressure stats were reasonably solid. I mean, we were plus or minus on only 1 or 2 on most pressure stats, except for our tackle number. Our tackle number was well below par. But it seems to me that we had just as much of the ball as GWS. But then, again, for those people looking on Facebook, if you have a look at the territory number, we ended up being, minus 891, so nearly 900 metres gained less than GWS, and yet we're basically level at half-time. So whereas the game appeared to be played for large periods of the time in our forward half in the first half,
it did, yep.
In the second half, we were nowhere near it.
Well, it was mainly down there in the third quarter there for a very large portion of that third quarter.
Yeah, well, even in the last quarter, the trend continues to go south in the territory stat. So, to me, it's a situation where we've got some serious issues with our centre setups. We've got some serious issues with our forward 50 entries. So it's horrific watching the ball going into forward 50. We're so inefficient. We lack any sort of imagination. We lack any sort of cohesion. The amount of times I saw JJ and Tex in the same place, that just shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen between your two key forwards.
That's the point I'm talking about, spreading. And really, there's a whole half an over you can spread. You can run around and go to different positions. And if they don't go with you, well, then you're obviously the next lead. But if they go with you, it makes it easier for the players that you've left behind. It's pretty logical, isn't it?
I think the one thing, and Macca, I don't know whether I'm on the money here, but to me, our forwards lead to get the ball, but I don't feel like they recognise the value of leading to create space.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And JJ, I think, is a big culprit. I think if he will only lead in order to get the ball, he doesn't seem to have the capacity to lead, to get out of the way, to create a hole. And often, when you're kicking the ball into forward 50, you basically want to be kicking to grass, as far as I'm concerned. And if you look in our forward 50, there's barely a blade of grass available to kick to. You're always kicking on top of people's heads.
And I think that does come down to the fact that he's a basketballer. He's not a footballer. I mean, I've been really impressed with his year so far because he's fixed up some other stuff. So if we can teach him to do that next, that'd be even better. But I think that's partly where it comes down to that. He just doesn't have that nous of that, as you were just talking about, that lead to space, back out and back in again. I know some people talk about in the chat getting rid of Gov, so we could move up the draft order, etc. But that's something that Gov does. Gov will do those multiple leads and he will create that space. So we need that in our forward line.
What worries me is that we don't appear to... there's such a disconnect between our midfield group and our forward group, and that surely has to be a coaching issue. Surely it does.
Yeah, I want to argue about it. In the chat they're talking about the fact that the guys that we lost with Pod from defence and Teague from the forward line. Teague obviously very, very, very good forward coach, and he had us with a very good setup. And Pod's done a great job with our defence. And I don't know. I'm not trying to bag the blokes that are currently there, but they may be in the throes of learning or something like that. But they certainly, the results aren't the same, are they?
I don't think so.
No, for me, I think it's more there's a lack of that lovely word of cohesion between the midfield and the forwards. That's the problem. But even I said to Macca whilst you had to pop away, Feenix, that when you have Eddie ballsing up a kick into the forward line, there's trouble.
Yeah. Look, don't get me started on Eddie, to be honest with you.
Sorry, on Eddie?
Yeah.
He's actually in the doldrums at the moment.
Well,
he's not earning his spot at the moment.
Well, he's a senior player, Macca. He's a senior player, and I know he's playing a forward role, and I know that's a difficult role to play, and all the rest of it. But senior players shouldn't be playing, and he's not the only one. Richie Douglas is another. And look, let's go through some stats. Because they make for interesting reading. Matty Crouch, 30 touches, 18 kicks, 12 handballs, 5 marks, 3 tackles, 3 inside 50s, 4 rebound 50s. He went at 63% disposal efficiency with 13 contested possessions and 16 uncontested possessions. 7 score involvements and 5 intercepts with 8 turnovers. Like I said, I was a bit nonplussed with Matty's game, to be honest with you.
Well, it wasn't a dominant game. I wasn't unhappy with his game. I think that if everybody had worked as hard as he does, I think we would have gone a lot better.
No, I'd never doubt his work rate.
He just felt to me, he felt to be a lot more proactive. And that whole thing there of the more kicks and the handballs, that's normally reversed for him that we've seen. So him going back to having those more kicks than handballs, that's him being a bit more proactive. And it seems to be him being a bit freer.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, I wasn't unhappy with his game. I mean,
yeah, it wasn't a great game. Like we've seen him do. There were some faults to it in terms of some of his defensive action and stuff, but it was the proactive part of it that I quite enjoyed seeing, because we haven't seen that for a while.
Yeah, that's probably true. He actually worked quite hard in the second half. He got quite busy in the second half. I felt like in the first half he was a little bit in the doldrums.
Yeah, a little bit. But he's one of the ones that actually lifted after half time.
Well, he didn't have a stat in the first half. I didn't have a clearance in the first half. Not one clearance. Stoppage or centre clearance. Not one clearance.
No, it was Sloaney. He was being held on to a lot, though.
Was he ever?
This pissed me off about the game. I thought the umpiring was, in some respects, consistent both ways for some things. But the ticky-tiny touchwood holding for forwards that was occurring, and then you see the blatant grabbing and throwing away that happened a couple of times, particularly on Crouch. Oh, play on, not a problem. Yeah, if it's holding in the forward line, it's holding there as well. Doesn't matter what part of the ground it's on, it's holding.
I remember one you're talking about, Nikki, where Crouch was physically thrown away.
Yeah.
and never even got a free. But I know I thought they really did make a point of trying to cut him out the game, but I thought that's why I was pleased with his game, that he fights through that.
Yeah, no, look, I don't think he's in all-Australian form by any stretch.
No.
You know, his season last year was one out of the box, and I guess with the injuries that he's had and whatnot, it's probably a bit much to expect him to be in that sort of form, but unfortunately we need him in that sort of form. And we've relied so much on him to get the ball in the past, to be one of our main distributors, and you know, these stats, him not getting a clearance in the first half, I couldn't remember the last time that's happened to him.
Well, that's true.
He was doing a bit of blocking for Sloan, though, because Sloan was being tagged as well. And I did notice that because Sloan had something like 5 in the first quarter, and I remember seeing a couple of them that it was Crouchy was actually, you know, being that secondary one behind to do the block. So I'm not that upset in terms of he was doing a role there as part of that.
Yeah. Smithers had a fantastic game, I thought, and showed why we miss him. 12 kicks, 17 handballs, 6 marks, 4 tackles, 3 inside 50s, 6 rebound 50s. He worked back really well, I thought. 14 contested possessions, which is great for him. Went at nearly 80% disposal efficiency. 600 metres gained, 6 score involvements, 12 intercept possessions. Wow.
Do you know that's Feenix? Do you know that's his second game back from a knee reconstruction?
Yeah, I know, right?
Did you know?
I know, right?
Yeah.
Who would have thought
They had to keep telling us every time we got the ball. It's his second game back. It's actually his 4th, you dipshits. He's played 2 in the SNFL.
Yeah.
But
some of those handballs, if you want to talk about proactive, they were amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
They were beautiful handballs. And I love the fact that they decided they were going to tag Laird, and Smithers went, okay. And then and the second half went, well, we've got to swap him onto Smith. And, hang on, that means we let Laird go.
But,
you can't take either of them.
Smith was comfortably our best player, I thought.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, easily.
I agree with that. Do you know what it looked like to me? It looked like Smith is a bloke who hasn't been around for all the doldrums at the beginning of the year and all the collective mind bullshit and so he's come in on last year's form. Like,
yeah, fresh as a daisy. Yeah.
He just wants to play.
Yeah,
Give him that ball. He just wants to play.
I think it actually shows you how devoid of confidence the rest of the team is, though, because he stood out for his willingness to take the game on and to be proactive and be aggressive with his ball movement and whatnot. And it was in stark contrast to a lot of our other players, and yet it reminds you that that's exactly how we were playing last year when we were on top of our game. So it's quite interesting, I felt, to see him take the game on where a lot of our other blokes didn't want to do it.
Yeah, well, he believes he can do it, and he can do it.
Oh, he can do it.
He's a quality player.
Yeah. And, of course, Rory Laird, you mentioned, did get tagged, but I felt like he was still pretty serviceable.
Yeah.
He had 16 and 9 for 25, had 6 marks, 3 tackles, 3 rebound 50s. He went at 80% disposal efficiency, only 5 contested possessions, but was a bit of a general back there. Was getting sat on, but still gained us 450 metres and 7 intercept possessions as well. He's just Mr. Consistent, really, Rory Laird.
Yeah, no.
He did have a few idiotic moments, but he does that every so often. What I found quite funny was, one of the first free kicks was to Lairdy being held, and then he got another free kick, which meant they had to back off that tag a little bit. They couldn't do what Port were to start off with. So the umpires actually love him. They want to give him free kicks, which is kind of funny. It was like, could you also do that same thing to our midfielders? That'd be nice. But I found that kind of interesting, which I think helped as well. But Lairdy, you can tag him, but what that means is you've got somebody on him, and he's going to man up on that player anyhow because he is a defender. But he will still take that opportunity. If he can intercept, he will do it. He's too good a player. He's a player I don't think you can actually tag well to completely take him out.
No,
just by the nature of where he plays and how he plays.
Yeah, he reads the play very, very well too. I think he played a very good, solid game, actually.
Yeah. The good thing, solid is right, Macca. I think the good thing about Lairdy's stats, looking at the graph, is that he was consistent over the 4 quarters. There's no peaks and troughs there. He started off a little slowly, but that's because we had a lot of the ball in the first little bit. But his trend is very solid, and you get what you get from Lairdy every week, and no one really can complain. Like you say though, Nikki, he is prone occasionally to little brain fades, under pressure sometimes. But by and large, it's excellent, I thought. What do we think? I'm interested to hear what you guys thought of Sloaney's game. 16 and 8 for 24 touches, 3 marks, 6 tackles, 7 inside 50s, 12 clearances, 1 rebound 50. He had 16 contested possessions, only went at 62.5%, but 8 score involvements. Turned it over a bit, but got us 335 metres over the night. What did you guys think of Sloaney's game?
Yeah, I thought a reasonable game. I thought he had a good work rate, and he was also being tagged pretty heavily as well. But no, I was really happy with his game. Not a starry game, but another good, solid game.
I think it's another that step forward that we've seen with him dealing with taggers. I thought that's what I was really mindful of, is how much they were holding him and blocking him and trying to stop him getting the run, and how he was just working. And it's like, I'm not going to let you stop me get to this ball. I'm not going to let you stop me trying to make an impact. And because he had that attention, that's always going to bring your disposal efficiency down a bit. So I think we can forgive that in a way because of that sort of what they were doing to him. But I thought it was a step forward for Rory.
Didn't get a kick in the last quarter.
Well,
Yeah, I wonder.
yeah,
I'll have
that's
to go.
that.
Yeah, I'm not
I
going to watch
didn't
that last
realise
quarter
that.
again.
I didn't realise that, but that is disappointing.
But he had possessions though, didn't he?
He had handballs. He had quite a number of handballs, but didn't
Oh,
have a
okay.
kick. Didn't have a kick, and I guess that's what I was getting at. I felt like he wasn't very effective when the whips were cracking in that last quarter.
Yeah, he
Well,
needed to step up then.
Yeah, well, there's some good company around him for that.
Yeah, I know, but I'm talking about Sloaney. He's a leader. He wants to be captain of the club. It's a game that we had to win. We're in the hunt, and he didn't get a kick in the last quarter.
Well, you say he didn't get a kick, but at least he did get some possession. So it's a little bit coloured by the fact by saying he didn't have a kick.
No. But I guess what I'm getting at, Macca, is it's a game. It's this midfield cohesion. Rory is a beautiful long kick of the ball, and he seemed to be playing a lot inside. He got a lot of contested ball. So you can never knock Sloaney's efforts, and I'm not knocking his effort. But we don't seem to have designated inside outside. It seems to change on a regular basis. And like I said to you earlier, the fact that Huey only had 3 centre bounce appearances in that second half, and yet we're burning Sloaney on the inside, where Sloaney can be so damaging on the outside. To me, the whole midfield setup is just wrong. It doesn't work.
No, that I will agree with. I just don't. And the other thing that we have a very bad habit, if there's a loose ball, and if there's 4 of us there, 4 of us will all hunt the ball. Nobody on the outside. If they get it, bang, out to the loose player on the outside.
But I think that's what I'm saying, Mac.
Yeah. You're saying we don't have an appropriate structure.
That's right. There's no designated roles. It doesn't seem to be communication between the players. This group of midfield players have been together for a while, and they've been under the same midfield coach for a while now. If any part of our team should be running like a well-oiled machine, it's our midfield, and yet it's not, in my view. Sources winning hit-outs and not getting hit-outs to advantage. As you say, we get dragged into the ball. We have the wrong players on the inside and the outside of the ball. We play Greenwood and CEY and Matt Crouch, and yet CEY and Greenwood are hardly sighted inside the contest and are hardly used inside the contest. Why do we pick them if we're not going to play them in the roles that they're suited for?
Absolutely. No, you can't argue with that. And I wasn't. We started off okay in the midfield, but as the game wore on, well, we started to look very raggedy-baggedy and very disappointing, I thought. Because we did win centre clearances in the first half. The second half got slaughtered.
What's your view on that, Nikki? You're very observant when it comes to these things. What do you think about that?
No, I think you're absolutely spot on. That there's such a mix-up all the time, and it's trying to figure out who's doing what. And previous years, it's been so easy to see who's in particular roles. There's so much change-up going on. I'm having trouble following it and trying to figure out what's going on. I do think, as much as the boys have loved Campo, he's did a great thing for us in a very hard time at our club. I do think for a midfield coach, he can't be part-time. I would actually like to see a change up and for us to wish him well and bring Franco into the midfield. I'd like to see what Franco can do.
Yep.
Good point. I agree with that. Yep.
Look, just on the midfield theme, Gibbs had 13 and 7 for 20. Played a lot on the wing, according to those stats that I mentioned previously. 2 marks, 7 tackles, 3 inside 50s, 3 clearances, 1 rebound 50. Look, he had 10 contested possessions, only went at 65%, which is a little bit low for him. 8 score involvements, 334 metres gained, and a couple of intercepts. I felt like Gibbs was probably one of the few who really, really tried to get involved in the game in the second half when the game was there to be won or lost.
He was my best player, I think, in the third quarter. Just watching that, even though we were getting spanked, he just seemed to be trying to be a bit more involved. And yeah, but he didn't have a lot of friends.
He had 7 tackles, and I thought he was very, very good at being alert as to where the ball was going.
Yeah, I agree with that, Macca.
And whereas some of our guys don't seem to have, they react at the last minute, whereas Gibbs has just got that perception a little bit earlier. And he 7 tackles. I remember in some of those tackles, he just swallowed them up the minute they took the ball because he had read it that way. And I think he could be used a bit more around the ball. Like you said, he's not used a lot in the centre square. He's used basically out on the wing. Sometimes he's half forward, sometimes he's up in the forward pocket. Somebody's in the back lines. He doesn't seem to have an absolute designated role. Maybe it's for a purpose. I don't know. But
Campo doesn't know how to use him.
No, he doesn't.
I think it's a Carlton syndrome. He's such a good player that you'd say, "Oh, how can we cover this? We'll stick Bryce there."
But basically, that seems to be what's happening with him.
Poor bugger. And he was coming here hoping to get away from that.
Yeah. Well, and there's no need for that to be the case. We've got enough depth in our midfield that we can give him a role. And really, to me, he needs to be that distributor in the centre area and around stoppage. But too many times he's one step away from the play, if you know what I mean. He's not that first give out. And when we do use him, I can't remember which game it was, but we used him sort of on defensive side of centre at centre stoppages. Nick, you probably remember, and he got 3 or 4 clearances in a row just because he was...
Oh, yeah, he went blunter.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Yes, I know, but I can't remember which game it was. But, yeah, he just went, nah, not letting you.
Yeah. See,
this is my ball.
This game, he did not get 1 centre clearance.
I mean, he wouldn't have because he wasn't there.
And that's what I mean, Macca. This again, but he was there for half of the centre bounces, and he was on the wing for the other. It's like starting off the back of the square, but not one centre clearance. Now, did we get him for that purpose? If we're not, if he didn't get a clearance up until nearly half time, not in either way. And I think it's because of the way they had him positioned. I don't think it's a knock on Bryce at all.
No, certainly I don't believe we're using him to the maximum in here. That's just my opinion.
So, it's just an observation that I've had with Bryce over the last month or so. It seems to be... and with our midfield in general, there just doesn't seem to be any real...
we almost use him like a spare parts player,
Yeah.
Use him a bit here and a bit there and a bit there. And the guy's a gun. We just got to work out where you get the maximum out of him playing there.
Yep, that's right.
Can we talk about something positive now?
Yep, sure.
Our defenders.
I was just about to get to that because we had Cheney, Duday, Keithy, I thought all played well. I felt like we were a little bit outmatched and really suffered because of Talia's absence. But I felt like Duday stepped up pretty well, considering he probably had to play a bit taller than he has had to do for the majority of the season.
On Himmelberg, and I thought he actually still did pretty well on Himmelberg, who's a hard player to match up on.
He's a gun, Himmelberg. If Elliot turns out like bloody Harry, then he's in good nick because he's an absolute jet, I reckon.
Yeah, he's got everything going to him, young Harry, hasn't he? He's a quality player because you could use him in so many different roles. But they've got the luxury of using him up forward in a forward pocket, basically.
And I actually thought Keithy actually played Cameron really well. It was interesting though that even when they pushed Cameron up higher, Keith stayed back. Keith's role was to be that fullback, whoever it was. So we were happy to do that switch, and that's when Duday would then go on to Cameron.
Yeah.
The one thing we did miss was Talia is a great organiser in the back line, and that's a couple of times we got caught out And I'm sure that if Talia had been there, we wouldn't have been caught out because he not only is a great stopper, Talia, but he is a good organiser of who goes where.
Yeah, agree with
I
that,
thought
Macca.
Cheney was doing that role, and I thought Cheney was actually did a decent-ish job at that. But you're absolutely spot on there, Macca. I did find something very interesting at quarter time. Cheney was going to the bench, but he was quite animated. You could actually see it on the vision, talking to Source and obviously telling him about positioning because Lob was getting down there. And Cheney was obviously telling him where he needed to be to stop that. And we then controlled that second half. And there was a change up in the defence, etc. So I found that quite interesting.
Just another player I'd like to touch on quickly is Jordan Gallucci. Interesting game, 10 and 1 for 11, 3 marks, 3 tackles, only the 1 clearance. Where else are we? 3 contested possessions, only went at 45% disposal efficiency, 4 score involvement, so nearly 200 metres gained. The reason I'm bringing up Gallucci is that something I've noticed about him is that he's always around the place at the back end of games. Have you guys noticed that? It starts very quiet.
Yeah.
You have stolen my bloody line. I was going to raise that very same point and ask you what was the breakup of his stats, because to me it seems like he always plays his best football in the last quarter when everybody else is starting to tire, and he's got that pace and acceleration, and all of a sudden he starts standing out.
Which he's got the pace, acceleration, and he's got the endurance.
Yes, obviously.
That's a really nice mix, because a couple of those things he was doing, he thinks, and he thinks so quickly.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what was the breakup of his stats? Have we got that?
His disposals were pretty even. His disposals were pretty even, but his contested possession numbers and possession numbers in general in that last quarter, that's where all his activity really ramps up. You know, and when so many of our players sort of went missing sort of through the third quarter and into the last quarter, Gallucci was one that didn't. And I just, it's one of the reasons why I really like the look of him, because it's about 4 or 5 games now where he's, not only is he noticeable, but he's quite instrumental at the back end of games. And it's a really good quality to have, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I'd like to see in these last couple of games? I want to see him in the centre for a couple of bounces.
Yeah.
I really want to see him in there. Because there's some pace we're missing.
Yep.
Oh, he's got lovely pace. And the one thing he's very, very good at too is getting the ball onto the boot quickly.
Because because he's either foot.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, well, we've prattled on about that for long enough. Let's get to our awards, shall we? Because there's a few there that qualify for a breakout award. Yeah, no one really, even WMJ was sort of patchy. Hugh Greenwood didn't probably get involved as much. Today was solid.
I actually quite like some of the stuff Wayne was doing, though.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. And nice that they finally figured out that he's got a really good fend-off.
Not that it's helped him at all.
No, he did one very nice fend-off there.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean.
And it was just like, no, go away. Oh, hang on, you're there. No, go away.
Yeah, the thing I think I like about Wayne's work of late is that his disposal efficiency has been very, very good. And his metres gained have improved. He got 350 again for us. So, I mean, he's becoming really effective for us across half back there. And now that we've got Smithers back, you know, it's just such a shame we don't have Seedsman as well. We've got some really good ball users and penetrating ball users off that half back line. Anyone else?
About that.
Anyone else? I mean, it's probably out of Miller and Duday, do you think, for breakout this week? Lockie Murphy had a good first half, but then kind of died away a little bit.
Well, that's because we turned him into a defensive player in the second half.
Mm.
And he did. He kind of shut Whitfield out a bit. So he did that right kind of thing. I like Murphy. I think he's got a lot to offer. And we haven't seen the best of him yet.
Yeah, agree with that.
But for me, actually, I think the one who just kind of just took that little bit more of a step forward in terms of his consistency, I think, was Wayne ahead of Duday.
Ahead of Duday. What do you reckon, Mac?
Yeah, I gave it to Miller.
Miller? That's Wayne.
Yep.
Do you know his first name?
All right, Wayne will do.
Junior or Hatchling?
Hatchling. All right, so Miller for the Breakout Award. That is reasonably good. The next one is Best on Ground. So let's have a think about that, because I think Miller are probably in the best three, but certainly not in contention for this one.
You're gonna get what you need. Gonna get what you need. You're gonna get what you need. You're gonna get what you need. You're gonna get what you need.
Thoughts?
Smithers.
Smithers easily.
Smithers easily. No love at all for Gibbs?
No.
He was good in that third. I thought he was like probably that most proactive. I love that word. Kind of one in the third, but overall for the whole game, Smithers, that was back to getting close to his best.
Yeah, to me it was Smithers 1, Gibbs 2.
Yeah, that's probably how I saw it as well, to be honest with you. Next one's going to be interesting, though, because there's a couple of candidates, and one very high-profile candidate, I think, that we'll be talking about. And, yeah, I don't know what we're going to do about this guy.
Now is your time.
Thoughts?
Well, we had a few candidates here too. You know, you could look at E, you could look at CUI, but yeah, Tex wins it hands down.
For me, and it's who Moyle is, just nominated as Campo. We've spent how long talking about that lack of cohesion, all the problems in our midfield. Nobody's got those set roles. We don't quite know what's going on. So for me, it's got to be Campo.
Yeah, this is a Players' Award, Nikki, and
Yeah,
I don't
I
disagree
didn't-
with you about Camporelli. But
I've given it to him before because that
no.
was where we lost it. That's where we lost it. Simply.
While you're right, Nikki, it is a Players' Award, so who's your player? You're trying to duck it.
No, I'm not, because there's quite a few. I mean, I know people have had a go a bit at Atkins, but it was when we did see him, he was doing some okay-ish things. It wasn't a game so much outside for us. So I think that caused a bit of problems for him. Cam was just too fumbly in the first half, which was such a
Yeah.
pity because I really do like him.
Yeah, very fumbly.
Really do like him,
I
but
actually felt our whole team was fumbly in the first half.
it's okay. I've actually lived in Canberra. I've actually played football.
Yeah, I assumed it was conditions.
Oh, it is so hard because your fingers are freezing. I actually went out and invested in a pair of gloves because that was the only way I could stop fumbling. It is actually probably, if you're going to play games there quite regularly, bloody wear gloves.
Yeah. Look, yeah, Ellis Yeoman, I think, gets a bit of a let off because of the way it was used.
Yeah.
What's like Tex? I'm willing to give Tex the benefit of the doubt in terms of his season because he's been hampered. But next year is going to be a pivotal year for Tex Walker, whether he retains the captaincy or not.
That's up to the players.
Well, it is up to the players, although, I mean, that can change at any time. Pikey might decide to pull rank. And I think the players only put forward their nomination, don't they? I'm not sure. I don't quite remember
no,
how
they
that
vote.
works with us.
They do put, I think, I'm trying to remember what it is, but the players actually vote on it.
Yeah, and
They do vote on the captain.
when Walshy was there, Walshy removed that, and it was
Walshy appointed him.
Walsh's selection only.
Yep. And then
so
the following year.
Pikey reintroduced the voting for captain.
Yeah, and he's been the easy winner from the players.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they have a vote this time around. I don't know whether he'll be such an easy winner.
Yeah, PJ's saying that the players nominate the group and the coach decides the captain. That might well be right. I know that with Walsh definitely used to have the final say.
Yeah.
I don't know whether the Pikey's doing that or not.
Yeah, I had a sneaking suspicion that the coach did have some sort of veto or some sort of overarching, nomination or something or other. But by and large, it's a player's decision. But I mean, I think Tex actually deserves a season where he doesn't have to worry about the captaincy and he can actually get himself right, because at the moment, like I've always thought that Tex is a very similar forward to Jack Revolt, probably not as strong in contested situations, but certainly as that medium-sized hard leading forward. Tex and Jack are very similar. When was the last time you saw Tex Walker play like Jack Revolt's playing at the moment?
No, I can't remember. I honestly can't remember. Probably about 2 or 3 years ago, he started a season in absolutely dominant form.
Yeah, then he hurt his foot.
Yep.
It's a real pity, and I'm not bagging Tex because he's a champ and he's been a fantastic leader of the club, and I think he actually deserves, for his own benefit, to have the demands of the captaincy taken away from him, so that he can actually work on getting his body right and having a good season and playing to his potential. Because at the moment, quite frankly, he's a liability, and there are forwards pushing up. McGovern and Himmelberg are pushing for spots, and Fogarty. There's going to come a point where he's no longer best 22. Well,
and on current form, that's absolutely correct. And I think, as it has been suggested by a couple in the chat, it might be a good thing for Tex to voluntary say, I'll hand the captaincy back for this year so that I can concentrate on getting my fitness up and my form back, and making a positive contribution to the side on the field, and concentrate on that. And I think that would be good for him, and it'd also be good for us. And then I think that Rory, I believe, is our spiritual leader, and I think that he would then be probably voted as the next captain if Tex did do that. And I think that would be better for all parties.
You go along with that, Nick?
It's a bit hard because I do know a few things from the inner circle, and I know all the extra stuff that he does do. But I do agree with you that his injuries have not helped this year, and I think he's felt he's had to put himself out there. And we have pointed out that we actually often do, even when he hasn't been playing well, he still actually helps to straighten up that forward line and control it. But he didn't look quite right on Saturday night, it's such a pity because I love him as a player, and I think he has a lot to offer. And I think he could still be captain again next year. It's just we need to rest him. We need to get his body right, let him have the preseason that he deserves.
Yeah, no, I definitely would like to see him not be the captain for his own sake and for our sake and for the team's sake.
Yep. All right, well, we're nearly at the end, but of course we have a very special segment coming up.
Well, I think the one that just epitomizes what the cockwombling numbnut was created for was something that was particularly stupid and made us laugh, and that has to be Port Adelaide for leading a game for the entirety of the playing time and losing it. I mean, that's just the absolute definition of the cockwombling numbnut.
It's hard to go past, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really hard to go past. I would like to give an honourable mention to the Eagles SANFL on-ground announcer who keeps calling us the Camry Crows. It's like, honey, we're not in the 90s anymore.
Yeah,
he
sure
also
that's
started at the end of the first quarter. Himmelberg marked just before the siren, so he's having a kick from the goal square. And the guy starts chatting away and going on. The Eagles have finished the first quarter and they're leading. And meantime, Himmelberg kicks the goal. We're all just sitting going, dude, no, you might want to pay attention to what's going on the ground. He's shocking, that dude. So he gets a nomination.
He gets a nomination.
Yeah, there is
he gets.
another very worthy nomination, and that was the field umpire who there was a shot for goal by, I think it was GWS, which missed the goal post probably about a foot into the
Oh, no, that was the goal umpire. The goal umpire got lost.
No,
it was a field umpire, Nick.
No, it was a field umpire. The goal umpire signalled a point, and the field umpire then ran in and said he was going to ask for a score review.
It was
and then
crazy.
when he started talking, he said, I'd like to check whether that was a point or was it out of bounds on the full.
It was
It was
crazy.
a point, you dipshit.
And it's missed the goal post by about 1 foot. And
I've never seen anything like it.
well, I think that, that guy has got to get...
Oh, yeah, that's a good one, because there was also the one with Ray Chamberlain where he called the touch and then wanted it checked.
Yeah.
You called it.
Yeah,
You called it, Ray. Back yourself.
Yeah, he made a decision, then they wanted it checked on the replay. But I thought that one, I love Port Adelaide getting these things, but perhaps we just give a little honorary one to that field umpire for being a bloody dickhead.
The other one is Vardy Magic actually gets a gold star for his going to Jenkins thought it was out in the full. But Vardy Magic.
Who did?
No. He's being funny.
Yeah.
Well done, Vardy Magic. But there was somebody said the AFL for the AFLW stuff up. It's like, no, the Gill actually won he's won it for the whole year, just on that stupidity and a little bit earlier. Some of the stuff the AFL's done, so that's why they're not getting a nomination this week, even though it's slightly carried on, but that's been and done. Somebody actually said that Sam McClure said McGovern got dropped. No, dude, he's coming back from injury.
Sam
He didn't play
McClure
last week.
would not know what bloody day it was.
it would seem to me that part of
He wouldn't know it ends in a day.
But it seems to me like part of his terms of employment are to try and raise speculative, nasty rumours about the Crows and that they have all these troubles. It seems to be he's full time at it.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, no, he just hates us because he's a Carlton supporter and we've taken all their good players.
He should hate himself for being one.
So we're giving it to the pair, are we?
Oh,
Yeah.
that has to have it because that was just the epitome of a cockwombling numbnut.
Yeah, they did make my day.
Oh, very good, very good. All right, well, that just about wraps us up, doesn't it? It's been an interesting
Good
show.
hour and a half.
Good hour. Well, it's always a good hour and a half with us. But look, I might have sounded a little bit distracted here tonight because I'll tell you what, I've been clicking things left, right, and centre, trying to get this stupid Facebook thing. For those who are listening, there's 6 people listening on Facebook at the moment, and I hope you're bloody happy with what we've been able to put up because it's been driving me crazy. But look, don't forget to listen to us on demand on Facebook or on Spreaker or any number of other platforms that we appear on. We're on TuneIn, we're on Spotify, we're on Google Podcasts, we're on iTunes. You can leave us a review on iTunes if you so desire. Of course, we will have Tuesday Night Live again back on Tuesday night. But in the meantime, Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Nikki and Macca.
No, pleasure to be here.
Well, of course, it's a pleasure
Same.
to be here. You're here with me.
Night all.
In spite of that, it was good, yeah.
Yeah, good on you. See you Tuesday night, guys.